The United States Constitution is the oldest written national constitution still in use today. Written in 1787, it created the framework for American government. But the original document was incomplete, and many founders knew it. So they built in a process for change, the constitutional amendment. Since then, 27 amendments have reshaped what it means to be American. This is the complete story of every one of them. The first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. They were ratified together in 1791 to protect individual liberties. The First Amendment protects 5 fundamental freedoms in a single sentence. Freedom of religion means government cannot establish or prohibit religious worship. Freedom of speech protects your right to express ideas, even unpopular ones. Freedom of the press ensures journalists can report without government censorship. Freedom of assembly allows people to gather peacefully for any purpose. And freedom to petition means you can ask government to correct wrongs. The Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms. It was written when citizen militias were essential to colonial defense. Today it remains one of America's most debated constitutional protections. The Third Amendment prohibits forcing citizens to house soldiers in peacetime. British soldiers had forced colonists to provide housing, food, and supplies. This amendment made the home a protected sanctuary from government intrusion. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures by government. It requires government agents to obtain warrants based on probable cause. This protects your private papers, home, and personal effects from intrusion. The Fifth Amendment guarantees due process of law before punishment. It protects against being forced to testify against yourself in court. No one can be tried twice for the same crime. And private property cannot be taken without fair compensation. The Sixth Amendment guarantees a speedy and public trial by jury. You have the right to know your accuser and the charges. And you have the right to legal counsel for your defense. The Seventh Amendment preserves the right to jury trial in civil cases. This covers disputes over property, contracts, and personal damages. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment for crimes. It also prohibits excessive fines and unreasonable bail amounts. These protections ensure punishment fits the crime without descending into torture. The Ninth Amendment states that listing certain rights doesn't deny others. People retain fundamental rights even if the Constitution doesn't specifically name them. The Tenth Amendment reserves powers to states and the people. Any power not given to federal government belongs to the states. This created American federalism, a partnership between national and state authority. For 64 years after the Bill of Rights, no amendments were added. Then the Civil War changed America forever and rewrote the Constitution. The 11th Amendment limits lawsuits against states in federal court. It was ratified in 1795 to protect state sovereignty. The 12th Amendment changed how Americans elect the president and vice president. Electors now cast separate votes for each office instead of combined ballots. This fixed the crisis of 1800 when rivals tied. The next 3 amendments emerged from America's bloodiest conflict. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery and involuntary servitude in America. It was ratified in December 1865 after the Civil War. It freed 4 million enslaved people and ended centuries of bondage. However, it contains an exception for punishment of convicted crimes. This loophole would shape America's criminal justice system for generations. The 14th Amendment made all persons born in America citizens. It guarantees equal protection of the laws to every person. And it prevents states from denying due process of law. The 14th is the most litigated amendment in American history. It has shaped civil rights, corporate law, and privacy protections. The 15th Amendment prohibited denying the vote based on race. Ratified in 1870, it enfranchised millions of black men. But enforcement was weak, and many states found ways around it. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and violence kept many from voting. It would take another century and more amendments to fulfill its promise. The next 40 years brought only 2 amendments, both about government structure. The 16th Amendment gave Congress power to collect income taxes. Before this, federal government relied mainly on tariffs and excise taxes. This amendment transformed how America funds its government and social programs. The 17th Amendment changed how Americans elect their senators. Previously, state legislatures chose senators instead of voters directly. Direct election made the Senate more accountable to the people. The next decade brought two amendments that transformed American social life. The 18th Amendment banned the manufacture and sale of alcohol nationwide. Ratified in 1919, it was meant to improve morality and health. Instead, it created massive organized crime and illegal speakeasies. Prohibition failed spectacularly and lasted only 14 years. It's the only constitutional amendment ever to be fully repealed. The 19th Amendment gave women the constitutional right to vote. Ratified in August 1920, it ended over 70 years of struggle. Suffragettes had marched, protested, and gone to jail for this right. Women voted in massive numbers in the 1920 election. However, many black women remained blocked by racial voter suppression tactics. Full voting equality would require decades more and additional constitutional amendments. The 20th Amendment shortened the transition period between presidents and Congresses. Before this, defeated officials served 4 months after losing their elections. Now inaugurations happen in January instead of March. The 21st Amendment repealed Prohibition in December 1933. It remains the only amendment to repeal another amendment entirely. The Great Depression convinced Americans that Prohibition had failed. Legal alcohol brought tax revenue and jobs during America's darkest economic hour. The 22nd Amendment limits presidents to 2 terms in office. It was ratified in 1951 after Franklin Roosevelt served 4 terms. Roosevelt led America through Depression and World War, but died in office. This amendment ensures regular peaceful transfer of presidential power. The 23rd Amendment gave Washington, D.C. residents electoral votes. Before 1961, D.C. residents couldn't vote for president at all. They could live in the capital, but had no say in choosing its leader. Now D.C. has 3 electoral votes, same as the least populous states. The 24th Amendment abolished poll taxes in federal elections. Poll taxes had kept poor citizens, especially black Americans, from voting. Southern states had used poll taxes to suppress black voters since Reconstruction. This amendment removed economic barriers between citizens and the ballot box. The 25th Amendment clarified presidential succession and disability procedures. It explains exactly what happens if a president dies or becomes unable to serve. It also lets a president temporarily transfer power during medical procedures. This amendment prevents power vacuums during presidential health crises. The 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18 in all elections. Ratified in 1971 during the Vietnam War protests. Young people argued, if you're old enough to be drafted, you're old enough to vote. 11 million young Americans gained the right to vote overnight. This was the fastest ratified amendment in American history. The 27th Amendment prevents Congress from giving itself immediate pay raises. Any raise they vote can only take effect after the next election. This forces politicians to face voters before benefiting from their pay increases. Remarkably, this amendment was originally proposed in 1789. It took 203 years to be ratified, longer than any other amendment. A college student named Gregory Watson discovered it could still be ratified. His professor gave him a C on the paper about it. Watson spent the next decade personally campaigning to get it ratified. State by state, legislatures ratified the forgotten amendment from 1789. In May 1992, it finally became the 27th Amendment. Watson's professor later admitted the C was wrong and petitioned to change the grade. One student's determination added a constitutional amendment 2 centuries after it was written. These 27 amendments transformed the Constitution from a flawed beginning into something greater. They abolished slavery, extended voting rights, and protected individual freedoms. Each amendment represents Americans fighting to make their country live up to its ideals. The amendment process continues today with proposals under consideration. Proposals include the Equal Rights Amendment, term limits, and campaign finance reform. The Constitution was designed to grow and change with each generation. These 27 amendments prove the founders built that capacity for change into its foundation. What began as a document of compromises became a charter of expanding freedom. The story of the amendments is the story of America itself, a constant struggle to form a more perfect union. Generation after generation, Americans have used amendments to bend history toward justice. The Constitution lives because Americans refuse to accept it as finished. And that work continues today in courts, legislatures, and voting booths across America. From 1787 to today, these amendments have defined American freedom. This is the full story of American freedom, written one amendment at a time. Thank you for joining this journey through every amendment to the United States Constitution. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out. See you next video.